This is Alan Smith, and you are welcome to the Entrepreneur Transition Podcast. If you're looking for ideas and inspiration to guide you on your business and personal journey, you, my friend, have come to the right place. Dickie Burrows, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Good morning, Alan. I'm fine, thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
It's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. Now, Dickie, you are, if I may say so, something of a legend in City of London finance circles. But for those people who aren't so familiar with you, take us back to your sort of origins. How did you get started in business? Were you what I could call a born entrepreneur, or how did you just get going with your career right back at the beginning?
I wouldn't say I was a born entrepreneur. I left school very early. I wasn't very diligent at school. I wasn't terribly academic, and there was a very nice deputy head teacher who I think saw in me a bit more than I did myself. And he came up to me. I think I was 17, and he said to me, Richard, as I was known, and he said, "I think you're wasting your time here. You're certainly wasting ours." And he knew a chap who worked in a dealing room in Morgan Guarantee, as it was in those days. And he sent me up there, and I got a job as a messenger in Morgan Guarantee, the bank. And that's where I started work, and I stayed there for about 12 years, eventually going through the back office and getting into the dealing room. So I became a foreign exchange trader. And that's what I did for about 25 years in various banks, Morgan Guarantee, Paribas, Fuji Bank, Daiwa Bank. Ended up at Mizuho, which is the big Japanese bank. And like lots of foreign exchange traders, when you get to a certain age, they seem to want you to move on. So I got called up to the departure lounge and left the bank in 2002. I'd done reasonably well. Foreign exchange dealing is a good business to be in. It pays very well. I wasn't the greatest dealer in the world, but I'd made a good living, not enough to retire. So I needed to do something, and I decided that I would stick with what I knew, and I started my own foreign exchange business in the city, called City Forex Limited. A very scaled down version of what I'd previously been doing, because we started off in a travel currency business, providing travel currency to all the connections I had in the city, which worked very well to begin with. And then we had a postal service that went nationwide. And then we moved into the international payments business because there was a natural demand. Foreign nationals working in the city wanting to send money back, people buying properties. And then we got into companies and eventually grew that business to a reasonable size. We had over 50 employees at one time, and exited in 2018. So there's a snapshot of where I've been. But in terms of answering your question about am I terribly entrepreneurial, no, it was a needs must thing, really.
Yeah, okay, that's interesting, because cast your mind back to that time. So as you very eloquently described, you were sent to the departure lounge at your then employer, which was big bank. And did you feel that was your only option? You weren't quite ready to give. So how old were you roughly?
I was 49.
Right. Okay.
So it wasn't my only option. I did try to get back into banking, into the dealing room. There was lots of consolidation in the banking world during that period. The Japanese banks in particular had gone through their lost decade, so they were getting rid of staff. The consolidation meant that the opportunities weren't there, and I found it difficult to find a job. In fact, I didn't find a job. So it was really looking at what I could do. It was a very thoughtful process, I can tell you, a bit worrying. But we set up from scratch. And I say we because I went into business with a business partner who knew about the travel currency business. And so we started that, as I say, we started that business in 2002.
Okay. And as you say, it was a needs must sort of thing. You had to give yourself a job.
Yeah.
No one sounded like
Yes.
no one else was prepared to hire you at the time.
Yeah, and I think that happened with a lot of traders and
Yeah.
brokers at the end of the
Yeah.
that time in the early noughties.
So tell me about the process of starting that business. So there was you and a co-founder. Were you
Yeah,
equal partners? Was it?
we were equal partners. It was 50%
Hmm.
shareholding each. Something that I'm not sure I would advise others to do. It did become tricky. I'll explain that later.
Okay.
Um, my business partner had a background in travel currency, and I'd known him since school days actually, and we met and chatted about this, and we just hit upon the idea of starting this business. I knew a lot of people in the city, lots of business travel in the city. And my business partner knew the wholesalers that would supply us. So it was a good marriage, really. It was quite fraught starting our own business. It needed a fair bit of capital because we needed stock. So we had to buy that. We needed premises. That was difficult because we needed what's called A2 premises, which is a classification that the City of London put on what type of business you can run out of certain premises. A2 is very prevalent in the city because you've got banks, insurance companies. So it's really services, finances. It's not retail, even though we were to some extent retail. So I took a premises on a 15-year lease without having the A2 permission granted, which was the biggest risk we took at the very beginning.
Wow. What was your thinking
And quite frightening.
behind a 15-year lease? It seems like a long lease for a startup.
Well, I think I was probably a bit naive,
Right.
to be honest with you. Now, though, if I had when I sold City Forex, we wanted to extend that lease so that the buyer had comfort because we were very well established in that location.
Right.
Because we had a retail outlet, and so I took the 15-year lease. That was probably a bit of naivety, I would
But it
suggest. But
worked. It worked
anyway,
well.
it worked because we got the permission from the Corporation of London for the change of use, and the rent wasn't too bad. I think the length of the lease as well increased the rent-free period that we
Right.
got,
Yeah.
and we were looking at accumulating as much cash at the beginning of that business venture as we could.
Right. And when you say stock, when you're in a foreign exchange business, does that mean currency or?
That was travel currency. Yeah,
Right.
we needed to have travel currency in stock, euros, physical dollars.
Right.
We needed to buy a safe, and we did. We bought a big safe. And I remember when we started, we needed to have sterling because obviously people are selling currency as well as buying currency, and they want sterling cash. So I remember going up to it was HSBC at that time in Oxford Circus on a Saturday morning, and picking up about £150,000 worth of sterling cash in a suitcase and taking it back on the tube
very carefully.
Very carefully, yeah, and very, very concerned.
Yeah, but you made it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So, and I guess the premises had to be kitted out to be secure because you got a lot of
Yes,
cash on the
that was quite
premises.
expensive. We had Chubb come and do that for us. That was an expensive thing. So it's the starting of the business, getting the premises, kitting the premises out, getting the IT and everything else, getting staff. I think our startup cost was probably about 250 to 300,000.
Okay, and how did you fund that?
Some of it I funded, and some of it I wrote a business plan. And after I left Mizuho Bank, they put me on an outplacement, and I went to one of the talks there and met somebody who was talking about how to put together a good business plan and how important it is if you're a startup. And it was so important. And I put together a business plan, did all the competitive analysis, what I thought we would make, kept it relatively modest, gave it to Barclays, who I personally banked with, and they opened accounts for us and lent us 150 grand. So
Okay.
we put 50 in each, and then we kicked off.
Okay. So you took bank debt to get started, and did that work
Yes.
out okay?
Yes, it was over 5
Yeah.
years. We had to put up PGs,
Right.
which, there was nothing else in terms of the business. So we put up personal guarantees. That was fine. And we paid that off over. We made a profit in our first year.
That's always helpful. Do you know
It was only £4,000
how much?
though.
4,000.
4,000 quid. I remember. Yeah.
It was very important. Well, you made a profit, which is
Yeah.
different to many startups in their first year.
Mm.
What's interesting to me straight away, Dickie, just listening to you, is on one hand you say I didn't feel I was very entrepreneurial, and yet there you were signing up to starting a business and signing up to a long lease without having the proper permissions that you absolutely needed to have, and there you were taking on what's not insignificant debt with personal guarantees. Personal guarantees mean,
Mm.
presumably, worst case scenario, the bank will come and take your
Yeah.
possessions,
Take your
take your
house.
house. Um, what was your family situation? Did you have kids?
Married, 3 kids. The children at that age, when I was 49, so my eldest would have been in his uh, early 20s.
Right.
Yeah,
So were kids
20.
still at home?
Yes,
Yeah.
all three were still at home at the time. I think my son was no. My eldest son was in the flat. He was at uni,
Right.
and my second son was just about to go to uni.
But still,
Um,
presumably dependent on dad to help out financially.
yes, I mean when I left Mizuho, I was fortunate in that they provided me with a very generous package.
Right.
So that was a big buffer for me to work with, because it was a 2 year gap between me leaving Mizuho and me starting the business.
Right. So, I mean, you remember those days. It must have been a pretty fraught period of time for you. Effectively, the clock is ticking. It sounds like you've got a bit of cash, but it's not going to last you forever.
No, the
You,
clock. Yeah.
yeah, and you were looking around for other comparable jobs, and it sounds like it wasn't possible at the time. There was,
Mm.
probably not unlike today. There was, financial challenges globally in the markets and so on. And so your alternative was start a business, take on a not insignificant amount of personal risk, and there's a
Mm.
family behind you, kind of relying on you to provide for them. So, I mean, do you remember
Yeah.
those days well? Was it a sort of keeping you awake at night period of time? Or how did you
It
feel?
didn't keep me awake at night. Um, if anything, I found it all rather exciting. Um, but yes, there were worrying times, and my wife, I knew she was concerned, but she never really said too much about it. But I did think that if I stuck to what I knew, I could, I could make a go of it, because, and I knew so many people as well. I mean, I had a very, very good network of people, and we were fortuitous. I mean, there American Express, who was a competitor in Cheapside, moved out at the time that we opened. So all of a sudden, a gap opened for us. And then Brown Shipley, who also sold travel currency, were bought by, I think, Travelex, and they moved them away. So we had this opportunity open up for us. And I was never shy in coming forward. So I went out and banged on everybody's door and said, you need our services. And what we did is we delivered currency to people's offices. We delivered it to their desk. They could ring us up at 9 o'clock in the morning. It'd be with them by 11.
Right.
So we had 3 people walking around the city loaded up with cash.
Right. So it sounds like a bit of luck involved, which often is
Yeah.
part of the case if you've got competitors closing down or relocating away.
Mm.
And I mean, then things are obviously a bit different now, but in those days, people traveled with cash. People took cash with them, and sort of a lot of business travel. Was it? So a lot of your customers were people who were traveling to Europe or the States or something.
Yeah, there was business. So we would start this service of delivering money. We would do the business travel piece, and then we would offer our services to all the staff. So we would go in and see somebody in the organisation, in the finance department, and say, look, we can do your business travel. By the way, can you advertise this internally? We printed leaflets that they could put into their coffee spaces, that sort of thing. So it picked up, and we became known around the city in a fairly short space of time. And having worked in the city for many years, I had this very sort of convivial attitude to going out at lunchtime and evenings and meeting people, and and I'll tell you what one we also did is we in our first year we had a gathering where we invited, I think it was all the receptionists on the doors of the buildings that we would go into, because they were the ones that had to pick up the phone and say, "Oh, the messenger." So we got them all together. We generated a lot of goodwill.
Yeah, very, very smart. So it sounds like you leveraged your network. You were well
Yes,
networked
absolutely.
by that point. You'd been in the city for many, many years. And so was that you primarily leading that, doing the rainmaking, as it were, knocking on doors, picking up the phone? Was it led
Yes, it
by
was.
you? Yeah.
It was all led by me. I soon discovered that there was what I described as an unequal distribution of labour
Right.
within the top of the business.
It's just taking us back to what you referred to a few moments ago about these. You went
Yes.
50-50. Well, so let's unpack that then. Talk us through why that was an issue.
Well, my business partner, I think the issue was, and I think this is something that I would give anybody who is starting a business with, with a partner, I'd give this advice, is that you need to both be aligned in what you're trying to achieve. And I think that, and I didn't realize it at the time, and my business partner, who I see and I get along with, is, there's no ill will. His attitude was really to run it as a lifestyle business, and my attitude was to create value, not take the money out, and create something that in a few years time would or whatever it took would we could sell and would put us in a very comfortable position. And my business partner, so we had these personal joint and several guarantees. We didn't do too badly. He went and bought a house and couldn't meet his personal guarantee after that. So that worried me a little bit. If something went wrong, it was all going to fall to me. So we had a conversation, an awkward conversation, but we changed the ownership.
Okay.
So we pushed it to me becoming the majority owner of the business. I eventually had 62% and he had 38%. But that meant then that I could direct the business in the way that I wanted to. Sounds very selfish, but it was necessary.
No, it sounds that in itself I find really, really interesting, because what I've realized, certainly from the conversations I've had on this podcast and other conversations just in business and in life, is that fundamentally there are two main types of business, and there are the idea of built to sell. We're going to scale, we're going to really grow this business, and at some future point, fingers crossed, someone's going to come along and write us a check, and we'll walk away happily. And there is an equally valid the idea of a lifestyle business, cash cow. We're going to take an income out. We're not going to kill ourselves. We're not going to spend a ton of money on marketing or advertising or anything, and we're going to have a nice lifestyle business. And it's really important to know what you are, what type of business you are, because everything you do beyond that is different. And so that, I think that's a huge lesson there. If you are starting with a co-founder or more than one, are you all on the same page? Are you all saying it's a beautiful lifestyle business and we'll take Fridays off and we'll enjoy ourselves and we'll make a nice income? Or are we going for growth, proper enterprise model? Because different strategies. So that's, you learned that through your own experiences.
Yes, very quickly. And it was always in my mind that I wanted to create a business that we could grow and that would, is it right to call it a pension? I don't know. But yeah, something that where we had real value.
Yeah.
And I kept money in the business. We started in 2004. Obviously, in 2008, it was a tough time, and for the ensuing 2 or 3 years. So I built up cash in the business because I felt we needed that, because we were going to have to get over humps like any other business. So we kept a fair bit of cash in the business, and we didn't pay ourselves lots and lots of money. We were salaried, and then at the end of the year, if there was a bonus that we could pay out, we did.
Yeah, but presumably always left a bit in, reinvested, plan,
Yes,
which you need to do if you're planning to grow the
you
business.
do. And then with a business like that, the more business you get, the more cash intensive it
Yeah.
is, because every morning, we were buying, in the end, we were buying million and a half pounds of travel currency a day,
Wow. Okay.
and sending that all over the country, because we started a postal service as well.
Right. Yeah.
And that was in conjunction with the company that eventually bought us.
Okay, so let's sort of go through this particular story and journey. Started 2004.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Same year we started here at Capital. So
Right.
must have been a good year for starting businesses. Not quite sure why, but so you rolled that forward, and you grew organically. You were just doing what you said, focused on growth and doing all the right things,
Yes.
and when it was still you primarily leading the business development side.
Yes, it was. Though we employed salespeople. So when we got into the international payments business, I employed two or three people on that side of the business who worked for competitors,
Right.
and we started to grow that side of the business as well. Lots of networking.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Um, so yes, we in the end we had two very different products. We had the travel currency business with the retail outlet, the pick and pack and post, and then we had, in our office, we had the international payments business, where we were dealing with, in the end, with some fairly large
Mm, mm,
organisations, and in fact have assisted clients of yours
yeah.
when Donna's asked me to help out
Yeah.
with some of their
Yeah.
their conversions.
Yeah, indeed. So, what sort of size did you get to, let's say, in terms of headcount?
The highest we got was about 55. There came a point in where we got a bit stale,
Mm,
where my business partner really lost interest in it, and we grew, and it became very, not unwieldy, but it became very difficult to manage for one person. So I did employ, a few admin staff. We had a good techie guy that came and joined us, but in the end, we needed to shift up a gear. We were approached by the company that bought us, which is FairFX, early on, and we didn't want to sell. We weren't ready. We were approached a second time, and that time we took a very serious look at it, and I got in an M&A man that I knew who sat with us, and he was very, very good, but it wasn't the right deal, so that didn't come about. In the end, the M&A man joined us and became our MD.
okay.
Right. So that is very intrinsic to the way that we then managed and sold the business.
Interesting. Well, we'll talk more about that in a
Yeah.
moment. So, I'm just trying to think. For most business owners, there's a point that something happens that triggers them to want to sell. I mean, as you say, you had a plan to build value in your business and have
Mm.
a sale price at some stage. Was it a sort of an evolution, and you sort of getting closer to the idea, or was it an event or a series of events that triggered the decision?
Well, we were approached initially, um, and I got my M&A colleague in, and we went through a process.
You're approached by what? By one organisation?
One
What? And
organisation,
they
the
and they,
one
they
that
said,
eventually
just got
bought
in touch
us.
with you. We'd like to buy your business. And you thought,
We were working with them.
right,
So
right,
they were also in the FX business. They had a prepaid card business. They were also doing some international payments. I mean, at one time when we were in between offices, we shared offices with them. We had a very, very close relationship. So I mean, it was always going to be a good fit that these two companies should come together. So we were approached, but the deal wasn't the right deal, and we decided not to do it. But it was at that time that I got Julian involved. He was the M&A man. He came and saw us, and he was the inspiration really to help, or part of the inspiration to help move the business on. Um, and look at the potential to. So once somebody whets your appetite,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
then it crystallizes the goal,
Yeah.
so to speak.
Yeah. What wasn't right, or what was wrong with the way the deal was structured or offered first time round?
Well, I think that it was, we were cash rich, and the company that were looking at us were not, and they sort of wanted to do an equity swap and buy us with our own cash, if you like.
Yeah.
So it wasn't the right deal for us. You know, it wasn't the right exit.
Yeah.
We didn't want to do it that way. So after long conversations and very friendly conversations, we said, no, this isn't going to work now, and we'll park that. And then Julian, who was also at the time working with another business that was trying to sell but didn't sell, again because of the economic climate, went and actually worked for that business first. There was a plant hire business.
And so
that
entirely different industry.
Entirely different.
Right.
And he sold that business.
Okay.
And the chap who owned that business, he introduced him to me, and I said to him, you know, we agreed, why don't you come and work with us? And my other business partner was bought out, and Julian and Peter joined the company, and that changed the dynamic a tremendous amount.
Well, did Julian buy him out? Or
not Julian, Peter, the chap who owned the plant.
Oh, okay. He'd sold a business.
So he came in, no FX experience at all, but he came in
as a shareholder.
Yeah, he bought out the shareholding of my other partner, so I remained the majority shareholder.
Okay.
And then Peter came in.
And you bring Julian. Now, Julian sounds like an interesting character. And when you say M&A, so what is his background? What was he doing historically?
He worked for an accountant, and that's what he did.
Okay.
That was his, you know, Julian was involved in the sale and purchase of business. Very savvy man, great person to have on your side. And when Julian came in, he and Peter, but Julian to the greater degree, I would say, opened my eyes on doing on making the business more attractive. So, for instance, you know, you can't sell a business if the management are going to have to stay in it. You know, no one's going to do that. They want you gone.
Yeah.
Unless it's a PE, but if it's a trade sale, for instance, they don't want you there. They want to take your business and kick you out. And we didn't have a strong management tier, so we wanted to strengthen our management tier, and that's what we did. So we brought in some better people to run the business, so I could stand back a bit, and Peter could stand back a bit, the new business partner. The other thing we did is we optioned quite a few of those senior staff, because we gave them options.
You gave them equity options in the business.
Yes.
Yes. And do you remember how did they actually work? How were they triggered? Was it something that happened on a liquidity event? Was it based on targets?
They were all triggered. No, we gave them. The thing was that we had people there. We wanted them to stay.
Yeah.
I wanted to step back a little bit because it was important that I did so. So I became the chairman, and we had 3 or 4 people on options that, you know, they could have exercised them any time they wanted to. I mean, obviously you have to go to the revenue, you have to sort that out.
Yeah.
But it was, and they knew that eventually we would want to sell the business, and when the business was sold, that they would benefit from that. And it nails people's feet to the floor. And I think that was a very good thing to do. And I was reluctant, I'll be honest with you, I was reluctant because I thought, well, these are my shares, this is my baby, you know, this is, you know, but if you do that and you get that buy-in from your staff, then what you're going to get is a better and bigger business in the end. So you're going to get maybe a little bit less of a bigger pie. And I think that's the way you have to look at it.
Okay, so your team and your senior and the important people, they felt incentivized then. It was in their own personal interest, regardless of anything else, which ultimately
Yes.
we're all driven by. What's
Yes.
good for us as individuals. So that's buying you some loyalty, hopefully long term. Anyone who no one's going to walk down the road to a competitor for a couple of extra thousand a year type thing. Do you find that did it change behavior within the team that were given these options? Did you notice anything behaviorally about them?
I did. I think that I wouldn't say they became more loyal, but they certainly felt much more a part of the organisation. You know, the value, you could sense that.
Yeah.
I mean, we had a very, very low turnover of staff.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think we ran a very good organisation. We paid our staff very well, I think, compared to our competitors. Even in the lean times, I always made sure that we gave semi-annual bonuses to our staff, you know, one holiday time, one at Christmas time, because it made a big difference.
Right.
And we kept those in place throughout the difficult times. And so our staff turnover was very low. We had a very nice feel within the business that people enjoyed. It was very friendly. But I think once the options were given, yes, people feel that they have an ownership of what they're doing, and that makes a big difference to their attitude.
Yeah, yeah. Incentives definitely do drive behavior, just in all walks of life. So it sounds like Julian was very, very instrumental in just the way you started thinking. You started thinking like a business that was getting ready to present itself.
Yes.
To sell. And that was a conversation, presumably, that you and he and who was it, Peter? Was the other one, the investor, that were having. So you were then began to be much more focused on perhaps going again with a sale. You'd had a sort of bit of an attempt at it before, it didn't work.
Yeah.
So we said, right, let's go after this again. So tell us what happened next.
Well, we built the business up. We increased the turnover. We increased the income, and we went to see. I think it was RMS that we went to see, and essentially put ourselves on the market quietly to see if
RMS, the accounting firm. Yeah. Okay. So you went to you did sort of appointed them as brokers of some sort, intermediaries to take your business to the market. Okay.
Take the business to the market, and we got all the management information together and put the pack together. And we had some interest. We had some interest from private equity, and we learned from that process that probably the management layer below us that we had still wasn't strong enough, because PE come in and they will interview the staff, and it wasn't. They were okay, our guys, but they probably weren't quite strong enough. So that was an eye opener. And we also had someone in the trade come and look at it. So we had potentially two buyers, but on the 23rd of June 2016, that collapsed, or the 24th of June 2016, because that was the day after Brexit. That completely took that away. So the potential to sell just dropped off completely after that event.
Specific to your type of business, was that we just felt that if the UK is no longer part of the EU, that was, or was it broader? Is it a broader economy thing?
Maybe there was some concern about that. Maybe the broader economy. Certainly, we did a lot of business in Europe. We didn't have an office in Europe, but we did a lot of business. We had clients that lived in Europe and businesses in Europe that would deal with us. So the issue of passporting probably worried people. I think just the uncertainty surrounding Brexit. In terms of the business, it doesn't really matter to us. Money moves, and money moves at an exchange rate, whether it's up here or it's down there.
Yeah.
It's a question of businesses adjusting to the exchange rates and getting themselves, talking to their suppliers, increasing their productivity, possibly reducing it. So who knows what goes on? But money moves, and if exchange rates fall as they did, it makes it difficult. But as I say, money still has to. If someone wants to buy goods, it's going to happen. So we were still doing lots and lots of business. It didn't really hurt us too much, but I think the uncertainty post Brexit was enough to put both these buyers off for the time being to wait and see. So we lost that, and we decided that we would probably try and grow the business again. So we pushed forward, employed more people, and pushed it on to the next stage.
Okay, just an interesting point you've raised there. You got potential private equity buyers, and as part of their process, they would interview management. That's something that they did.
Yes.
So you're obviously sharing this with your management team. We are planning to sell the business.
Yes. Yeah. Only 2 people. It was only 2 people.
Okay. Yeah. I'm just wondering how do they feel? How are they impacted? Do they think, well, I might lose my job now as a result of this, or no, they want to keep you on?
Well, I think they thought that they would be kept on because we would step aside and they would be the people that were running the business, and not only that, they were also incentivized, remember, by a sale coming up, so it wasn't quite as daunting to them at the time.
Okay, but at the time, potential buyers or as part of the process, you identified that perhaps it wasn't quite a strong enough team to lead if you had departed.
Yes.
Right.
We did, and so we decided that we would have to go and get a proper managing director.
Right.
So we decided that we got new offices, we would grow the business, and we would prepare for the next opportunity to sell whenever that might come. So we spent a lot of money in 2017, late 2016, 2017, to build it up. It was a tough year because when I say we spent a lot, the profitability got whacked.
Yeah.
The EBITDA went right down, but it was necessary. And then we decided we'd get a managing director in so that we could step back completely and that the business would be independent if we wanted to sell it again, whether trade or PE. So that's what we did. In 2017, we had more interest. Interest came back.
Did you go through a similar process again using RMS?
No, we didn't. We left them out, and we were talking independently to another potential buyer who'd come up to us, and this time it was a small bank, and we knew them very well. We had worked with them in wholesale currency business, so we engaged with them, and we danced around for quite some time with them, and eventually they came to us and said, yes, we definitely want to have a go, but came up with a derisory offer, and we thought it was the starting point, and we said, no, we are here. It didn't work. It was a bit crazy. So, we didn't mind. We just thought we'll carry on. And then eventually the guys who tried to buy us the first time came back, and I remember having lunch with the CEO and said to me, what are you up to? And I told him what we've been doing, and he said, you should have told me. We'll buy it. We'll buy you, And I said, well, it's a bit late now, because I said we just trashed the EBITDA by trying to expand. And because we were still working with them and doing all their travel currency for their clients as well as ours, he said, no, I understand that. He said, but I think I know where the enterprise value of your business is. And he made us an offer, which we accepted.
Okay. That is interesting. Let's just talk through that. Did you ever, on a personal basis, do any sums and work out what your number is, what you need to have in order to be able to walk away, be financially independent?
No, not really. To be honest, I had pensions from my banking days. So we didn't have a figure in mind. I mean, the more we could get, the better, I suppose. Yeah.
Okay. Well, so how did you arrive at a valuation? Is it a multiple of EBITDA? Is it? I know these things. It depends what the buyer wants to pay, but
we were looking at EBITDA. That's generally the way that Julian always worked. That's what we were looking at. In this case, EBITDA didn't work for us because we had spent so much money in that year building it all up, and so he said to us, "Well, I know what you're doing. I know what the enterprise value of your business is. We also had a discussion about what was our working capital. We had a lot of money in the business, that we had to negotiate with the revenue to get it out, and it was surplus cash, really.
Just on that, I think it's worth just taking a minute to explain to anyone who's listening into this. This is the point that successful businesses that have built up a cash pile in their business, under normal circumstances, if you choose to take that cash out of your business, you're taxed fairly heavily, whether you take it as
it would be seen
as an income, a bonus, salary, dividend. If you leave it in the business, obviously you pay tax within the sort of corporate structure. But then what a lot of business owners often will try to do is have that paid out as part of the sale price value. And of course, we're subject to capital gains tax on the individual, which tends to be significantly lower than other taxes. However,
absolutely,
of course, our friends, the taxman, is wise to that. And so you do have to seek permission. If the amounts are significant, particularly significant, you certainly would need to be careful and cautious around just.
We were, but it's we had a lot of cash. When I say we had a lot of cash, I mean a lot of it was in currency. We had this working capital, and it was pretty big, and we negotiated with them to essentially pay us for that working capital.
Yeah.
Not all of it. We gave a third of it away, I think, and then pay us for the other 2/3. And of course we had to discuss that with the revenue to make sure that that it wasn't seen as surplus cash. I called it surplus cash earlier. It's not really surplus, So that was money that we were utilising in the business, and we were paid for that. So
okay. And beyond that, so as you say, so the EBITDA multiple didn't work because you trashed that number, spending it on these other activities. But you had an understanding buyer who got that, who understood that, and the CEO of the company that did buy you, he just had an intuitive view. He just said, "I just know what your valuation is," and it was broadly it was the same ballpark as what you were hoping for.
Yes, I mean they wanted to grow their business, and the best way for them to grow their business was by acquisition. So we were the first acquisition really that they did, and by the way, I still work with them or for them, and when they acquire other companies, I go and help them, particularly on the compliance piece, and often Julian helps them on the purchase of businesses. So we're still very friendly, but Ian knew. Yeah, he came up with a number that actually, if you did it on an EBITDA basis, wasn't far away from where we would have wanted.
You mean in normal times when you hadn't?
In normal times,
yeah, the sort of the average sort of profit you'd have been making under normal circumstances.
Exactly.
And what are typical multiples in your sector?
5 or 6.
5 or 6 times,
I would think.
EBITDA,
right. For a business of our size. I mean, it can be. If you've got much bigger businesses, then I guess it can be greater. But if you're talking about the international payments, travel currency business of our size, I would say 5 to 6 times. 6 is probably fair. With the bigger businesses, then maybe you'd be pushing up 8, 9. Perhaps.
Okay. So at that stage, so you receive an offer, and it's in the ballpark of the numbers you're looking for, you and your other shareholder. What was the next step? Just talk us through, if you would, the process.
Well, our process was very, very unusual, I think, because it was very much, I wouldn't want to say informal, but the way that the offer came in was very informal from Ian. It was over lunch. I knew him very well. He came up to the office. We talked. We agreed. We agreed what residual would be held back and for how long, and that was a very easy agreement. You've got to bear in mind that we were really good mates, which was made life very easy for us. We had Julian on our side, who was been used to buying and selling, or helping people buy and sell businesses, so he was very useful for us. We let Julian get on with it.
Right.
We employed a lawyer, and in terms of the sale, it was handled by Julian. We didn't go and employ another accountant because he had all that experience. So that was very fortunate. And then we engaged with the accountants on the other side and their lawyers. And the offer we got was on December the 1st, and the business was sold on, I think, the 14th of February. Wow. So it was very quick.
That's quick, particularly with the holiday period in between that as well.
Yeah.
That's very quick. So the legal process sounds like that was okay. That can often be a sticky point when lawyers go head to head against each other.
Yeah, legal process was, the lawyer, there was a bit of back and forth with it. It's a fairly straightforward business. Yeah. We gave all the necessary warranties that they wanted, which weren't onerous, and they ran off after 2 years, so there's not too much worry there. The indemnities we had to give were mainly on tax. Yep. But we were very comfortable with that position. We'd always paid our taxes. Our accounts were audited, so we didn't have any concerns with that. So I would say that the process, I mean, it's easy for me to sit here and say it because Julian did all the hard work and put it all together and replied to all the questions. But for me, the process was relatively simple.
Yeah, it sounds like it, and certainly that period of time, that's a short period of time from all the transactions I've been involved in or seen. Yeah. Any surprises during that process for you?
No surprises, not really. Surprised that we got the offer in the way that the offer came through. Surprised to some extent how fast it happened. But no surprises. I think we were fortunate in two respects. Having someone like Julian working for us who is very clever, who really knows how to do this, and it's formidable. And having somebody that we had worked with for years, doing all their travel, sending out all their travel currency under white labeling it and doing their business for them, and who knew us inside out, and who were very, very friendly and knew our business. They knew our business. Made the process much, much simpler.
Yes, that counts for an awful lot. It's an option, unfortunately, not available to everyone. No. But to sell to somebody that knows, you've got an embedded trust that exists already. Yes. I guess you're far less confrontational, far less, dotting every single I and crossing every single T, because you've known each other for many, many years, and it does count for a lot. And as you say, it sounds like Julian was really, really invaluable during this process.
Absolutely,
getting on with it, and his experience. So some useful pointers, I think, for others. Were there any low points in this for you? Did it ever feel like it was going to not proceed at any point?
I think going through, looking back through some of the contracts that we had with some affiliates and partners, and going through some of that stuff, we wondered whether that might trip it up. Only because perhaps they were too generous, or I don't know. There wasn't really anything that made me think it wasn't going to happen.
Yeah.
They wanted to.
They wanted to buy the business. You want to sell, and you knew there was no skeletons in the closet. It was just they could do their diligence. They'll find you, and it sounds like Julian and the team provided information required in a timely fashion.
The other thing was as well, and again, it's very important that many of my staff, because we worked so closely together, knew the staff at FairFX. So integrating the teams was something that wasn't daunting for either business. We felt that would work very well because there was this familiarity. It doesn't always work well, I have to say, because there are different regimes, there are different systems, there are different ways of doing things. So,
well, very, very much so. That seems to be one of the key areas where acquisitions and mergers trip up, because there's a culture clash. the way that you
Yeah.
operated your business could be very different to the others. But it sounds like there was a lot of similarities
There were.
with the
Yeah.
people. So did all of your team know that you were going through the sale process?
The management team,
Yeah.
in this case, no. They knew before when we went, the PE company was looking at us. But no, we kept this one quiet.
Okay.
We kept this one quiet. We felt that and that was at the request of the Fair FX guys, because it would get back, because the companies were so close, it would get back.
Yeah.
So,
did you find that a challenge? Because presumably you're busy. There's meetings going on behind the scenes. There's lots of activity, and your team
yeah,
are probably wondering, where's Julian
it is
today?
it is a bit of a challenge. Yes, we were out of the office a lot,
Yeah.
doing stuff, and people wonder. People can get an idea something is happening here, and I'm sure people felt that there was something afoot,
Right.
because we did have to send lots of information out, and we were, that wasn't always at my fingertips or Julian's fingertips. So we were going to our staff saying, "Where can we? We need to get that." So people have a sixth sense about this stuff. So when the announcement was finally made, I don't think it was a huge surprise, but we did not discuss it in the office or with any of the team. We had actually been in the process of employing, if you remember, I said we wanted to employ an MD, somebody that could come in, run the business. We could step back a little bit, and it could be sold a bit more easily. And we were in the process of that MD when we employing that chap and made the offer when we got the offer from Fair FX, and we didn't tell him for a while. He was rather shocked when we said, "I know we've offered you the job when you've accepted it, but by the way, we're selling." But he moved with the business to the new business,
and it worked out.
It worked out, yeah.
It's good. So when did you sell? 2018.
2018, February 2018. Yeah.
Do you remember the day you completed? What that was like?
I do.
Tell us what went on that day, or what was the process? Was it a late night, or was it a?
It was a very late night the night before, because we were in the lawyers' offices, and we were reading through all the I mean, there are reams and reams and reams of documents to sign. The warranties, the indemnities, the contracts, the share purchase agreements, everything. So we were in our lawyers' offices. I remember until about 1 a.m. going through this stuff and signing it all and preparing it. It then went off to, their lawyers were there as well, looking at everything. The following morning, it was agreed that everything was in order. I think we left it a day, and then the following day, we called everybody in and made the announcement. And there were some tears, I think, from some of the staff who felt that this is the end of an era. This is it's all going. As you said, did they think they were going to lose their jobs? But Ian was very good. He said, "No one's going anywhere. This is we want to bring everybody in under the umbrella," and there weren't any redundancies.
Okay, good.
I mean, some people have left since, but
yeah.
And it was a very exciting day. And then I stayed on for 6 months for a handover, which was fine.
Did you do anything personally to celebrate? Did you buy yourself? Did you buy yourself any nice toys or?
No. I didn't go and buy cars or watches or stuff like that. No.
Okay.
Not me, really. Probably a few glasses of very nice wine.
Good.
Okay. That was fine, but no, I don't have a Bentley or a Aston Martin, or I'll leave that to Don.
Yeah. For those who don't know Don, you can go back to a previous episode and learn from his wisdom on this podcast. Don's a colleague of mine. So you you stayed on for 6 months, part of the transition
Yeah.
and handover. How did you feel? You know, part of the premise of this podcast is this is really interesting. The business story is very important, very interesting. But I'm always intrigued by the human journey and what went on.
Mm.
How did you feel? You were focused on building a business and you know, very deliberate. You knew what you were doing. You were a business owner. You were the founder, CEO,
Mm.
whatever. And then you weren't. You were an ex business owner at that
Yes.
point. How did you?
How did I
What
feel
went on for
about that?
you personally, emotionally?
Well, I was 63 at the time, and I felt that the timing was right. You know, you get to 63 and you look forward and you think, you know, how many active years have you got? And so in one respect, I was thinking, great, I can go and travel a bit more. Mind you, I've been doing some traveling anyway. I can go and travel a bit more. We like to travel a lot. Again, there isn't, Alan, there's not a great deal that sort of daunts me. I just think, great, you know, this is the next stage of my life and move on. So was there an emptiness? Yeah, I guess so. I think the thing that I miss most of all is decision making.
Right.
You know, because you've been a foreign exchange dealer all your life. You're, you know, working in a dealing room. You're making decisions all the time without much or not much time to think. You know,
Yeah.
market events happen. You've got to move. So making decisions is a great part of your life, and all of a sudden you're not doing that. So I suppose there's a slight emptiness there. But the handover was quite easy. Great deal to do with compliance, which you will know is the most burgeoning of industries now, and compliance rules the world. So I managed to get all that across. Then I stayed on with them. Ian asked me to stay on and just help in future. So with certain tasks, nothing particularly defined. That's changed a bit now because I do help with their compliance operation now. I sit on their risk committee looking at the trickier stuff,
right?
Mainly because I'm long in the tooth. And when they acquire businesses, I help them to some extent, looking at doing compliance audits and looking at the businesses that we're acquiring and whether they're up to scratch.
And you can do that from a position of personal and professional experience.
Yes, and I can
been there.
do
You've
that.
done it yourself. You've been personally through that journey. And
yes,
you can act as wise counsel to your
exactly
to the company.
Exactly,
which makes
and I can do it pretty much anywhere in the world, which is a nice thing.
Well, that's a bonus because you do that. So you've got the best of all worlds now. Presumably, you're still doing a bit of that, keeping your hand in part of the decision making process, which you enjoy, but presumably spending more time doing the other parts of life, traveling,
Yes,
enjoying the fruits of your labor. So,
yes,
very, very good. It's a fabulous story, Dickie. In the way you, it sounds. You know, there were a couple of goes at it at getting a sort of sale and exit for very understandable reasons. Didn't work, but it sounds like every process, every experience just helped you to sort of hone and fine tune the strategy. You knew if one didn't work, you sort of back to the drawing board, and then you sort of got your business in shape. And ironically, it was back to the first potential buyer, who then you understood each other more. Personal relationship was important. Building the team was really important. Having Julian and the others as part of it was really, really essential. So now that you are looking back on those years, and you're in obviously a different position, the question that I ask everyone on this podcast is talking about. I always talk about this concept of true wealth. There's wealth, and there's what I call true wealth.
Yes, I saw that.
What's your feel? But when I say that phrase, true wealth, what does it mean to you?
Well, it doesn't mean money. I mean, money is part of it, I guess. A wealth of experience, I suppose. Freedom. I think it's difficult to define what true wealth is. I think
freedom's a good word. It's a one word answer, I suppose, to that. So presumably, freedom of you. I don't know your personal circumstances, but I guess you've got a degree of freedom in terms of what you do, on a day-to-day basis, and how you spend
Absolutely.
your time, who you spend your time with, that sort of thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
indeed. I mean, like every morning, I didn't this morning, but most mornings I go and do a 4-mile walk with a mate before I do anything else. That's great. Yeah, the freedom to be able to dip in and dip out, if you like, of all the things that I enjoy. And I think the other thing is to have true wealth for me as well means being able to have gone on this sort of journey, not just the business that I started, but working in banking before that, and learning at a very early age when I left school that being a messenger in a bank is not what I want to do, and why did I waste all that time? And that really spurred me on to better. I guess to have almost completed the journey and know that I've been able to provide for the family. You know, we live in nice surroundings. I think we're very fortunate. I mean, hard work there's no excuse. There's nothing else other than hard work that gets you here. You know, we didn't go on holiday for 5 years when I started City Forex because I was working 330 days a year, and my business partner wasn't. You know, that's when I said there's unequal distribution of labour.
Yeah.
But coming out of the end of it, so the children are set up. You know, they've done well. I've got 2 boys who are both underwriters. My daughter works in cabinet office at the moment, so I've been able to help them get onto the property ladder, which is fortunate for them. But and a lot of other people don't have that, parents with that ability. So that to me makes me feel it takes the worries away. The worries lift a bit. Maybe true wealth is not having to worry.
That's a neat summary. That is, yeah. You've
or not having to worry as much.
Yeah, I suppose we all worry to some degree, but sounds like far less than many others. So
yes.
Congratulations on that, on your journey. And I know you're not finished yet. You're still very active and still up to all sorts of things. Dickie, is there anything in terms of where you've taken your sources of inspiration over the years? Do you read books? Do you watch movies? Any experiences? Anything that particularly business owners might find interesting?
We spend a lot of. I mean, we go to the theatre a lot. My wife loves to go to the theatre, so we go to the theatre a lot. If Simon Russell Beale is on in a play in London, I'll make sure we go and see it. Books I don't read. I'm an avid reader of newspapers. I'm an avid consumer of news because it was just always there when you were in a trading room. You were always hooked up to the next piece of news.
I guess it was so important, news, because news just drove currency exchange and rates.
It does. So, yeah, exactly. Okay. So everything that's in the public domain is in the rate. It's the next piece of news that no one's expecting that pops up that drives the movements in currency. So I was hooked on news and still am. I don't read books very often. As I say, I'm more into reading newspapers, periodicals. Films, what do I like films? I like films like As Good as It Gets, and I don't know if you've ever seen that, but it's a great movie. Yeah. Some like it hot. Things that nothing too.
Okay, so that's interesting. So often you will, even though you've been a very active, clearly successful entrepreneur and businessman, some of your inspiration comes from nothing to do with that. Almost getting inspired by the creative arts. Some of those films are they're just entertainment, whether it's going to the theater. So maybe that's how you kind of decompress and you sounds like your brain will be pretty busy if you're consuming news every day. but maybe just the other side of that is just to watch a good old film, put your feet up and just
take you away.
And
I've done a bit of. I've written some stuff in the past and done some performances with friends, which is mainly comedy, which was good and very enjoyable. But the most frightening thing I've ever done in my life.
You've performed comedy.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah. So we look forward to come and seeing your next stand-up show, Dickie.
No, that was a long time ago. They were more monologues and it was more Stanley Holloway than.
All right.
Than Michael McIntyre, I can assure you. But It was very enjoyable.
Very good. Dickie, just before we finish up, if anyone hears this and wants to sort of reach out and get in touch with you, is there a good method of contacting you that we could just put in the show notes? Are you on LinkedIn?
Yeah, you can put my email address up.
Okay. Well, we'll add that. So if someone's got some inspiration, want to connect with you, they've got a great idea, or want to invite you to the theatre,
I'd be very happy to talk to people. Yeah, definitely.
Excellent. Well, Dickie, it has been a fascinating conversation. Thank you so much for your time today, sharing it all with us. Some real, important lessons for other business owners and entrepreneurs as they explore their own personal journeys. So for now, Dickie Burrows, thank you so much.
Alan, thank you very much for inviting me.
Thanks for making it this far. I hope you found this episode to be helpful. If so, I'd like to ask you for a small favor. Can you please go to Apple Podcasts and leave a 5-star review, as that's one of the best ways for others to find it. And please send a link to the podcast to 3 friends or colleagues who you know will find it helpful. That way we can spread the word and everyone can benefit. All the show notes and links from every episode can be found at www.entrepreneurtransition.com. Thanks again for tuning in and being part of our community. I'll see you next time.